Hello.
Alright, let's make this quick, let's make it efficient. It's Bone Spear, I'm Pat. That's the wrong order, but we'll just power along. AOZ, Bone Spear. It's a match made in heaven if critical strikes were still the big in thing, but since they're nerfing this season, they're, still okay. They're still a great source of damage. It is just that overcommitting to it is no longer as viable. And the theme of the season, the name of the game for the season of Blood is Overpower, which puts a purely crit-based Bone Spear in a weird spot. It's still good, it just feels like I'm not playing the game as the season intended. Regardless, it's still a very efficient thing, can efficiently do 10 with, enough levels in the Tears of Blood, but then again, what can't, and is relatively simple to pilot thanks to the Ring of Sacrilegious Soul, which automates a lot of things from Corpse Explosion so you can keep certain buffs online to Corpse Tendril so you can keep certain things stunned and offline. Gameplay wise, this is very, very similar to previous builds that I put up that have the Lidless Wall, which this does have to maintain the damage reduction as well as the critical strike chance bonus. Stand in a safe spot and fire away while applying Bone Storm to people thanks to Lidless Wall, although there is the unique pain point for this that it cannot achieve maximum value because it likes bouncing Bone Spears, because that's how Bone Spear works, as well as Deathless Visage, because Bone Spear now leaves behind echoes, which will not appear if, at least not many of them, if you try to shoot them into a ball, because the Bone Spear doesn't get to bounce back and so forth, so a lot of your damage is gone unless you trick a suppressor into fighting near a wall, then you can start bouncing the Bone Spear off the wall to get maximum value. Anyway, it's a whole thing. If I see a suppressor, let alone two in AOZ, I'm just going to walk along because near as I can figure, AOZ dungeons are endless and it is just not worth the risk of standing in front of a bad guy hoping they don't just bean you to death. As always, while this is a very defensively sound build, hitting various caps in both resistance and armor, because I like being safe no matter what, or as safe as possible, even though this is mainly a ranged build. Eventually, it will come a point if you really want to push with this build that you have to give up some defense, and that's where stuff like Ubers come in, like the Grandfather. The Grandfather is very good for this build. Unfortunately, it does limit our activation of Lidless Wall. Actually, running the Grandfather on it, while viable, it does require a slightly different build, which I might talk about in another video. For now, this is it. It's very tough, it's very strong, it's very comfortable. If you just want to dip your toes into the 10s, I would recommend this build as well. I also recommend, this is not something I've discussed in other Necromancer videos, but if you're about to clear the area, you're about to summon the Guardians in AOZ, I highly recommend not using your Bone Storm right before they pop out so that you have time to apply it. Or at least, you have it available to cast, because there is a non-zero chance they might pop up in a weird spot, or you won't be able to proc a Bone Storm on them and you'll be left a little less than your best. Anyway, link in the description below. We're gonna go over the gear aspects and so forth right now, but if you just want to look at a build, feel free. I'm not gonna hold it against you, but if you do, like, comment, subscribe, ring that bell, do all those nice things and more. That helped me out a lot. For the rest of you, let's look over the items, then the Vampiric Powers, then the skills and Paragons. First off, Deathless Visage. It has damage reduction, which is really nice to see in a unique helmet, by the way. It increases your physical damage and increases critical strike damage with bone skills, as well as increasing maximum essence. It's a very nice helmet, although if I were to get a Harlequin Shako, I would probably replace it. Even though the unique ability that Bone Spear leaves behind echoes that explode, dealing damage that scales up with your critical strike damage bonus. While that is good, I feel like the damage reduction on Harlequin Crest, or the Shako rather, as well as the +4 bonus, does make up for that very well. Of course, Disobedience on the chest, although if you can somehow jack up your armor to 13.5, you probably can get away with not having Disobedience on your chest and put in literally any other defensive tool. For our gloves, we're putting on the splintering aspect, which, my god, it really makes Bone Spear kind of a monster. Bone Spear's primary attack makes enemies hit beyond the first vulnerable for 2.5 seconds. Bone shards from Bone Spear deal extra damage, 60%, to vulnerable enemies and pierce them. So it's now an amazing clearing tool. For our leggings, or our Pants, rather, we're still running the Shielding Storm aspect, which is one of the best things ever since it counts Bone Storms generated by Lidless Wall, which means you'll always have a barrier generating what is essentially life for you. And that is enough for me to almost always consider running Lidless Wall. Oh, even though it means I can't run stuff like the Grandfather, it's just too good to ignore. Okay, for our boots, we are running with Ghost Walkers. At least I personally like it because it synergizes with a lot of things. However, if you find you're more comfortable with a different aspect, this is very much a flex slot. You know, you can go with what you want. A lot of people try to go with the exploit one because they increase damage against unstoppable things, which enemies do become after they shake off your like a hard CC, which means yes, it is a rare damage bonus on your boots. That alone might make it worth running. For our hands, we have the aspect of Serration on a sword for increased critical strike damage. The Serration aspect increases the value of the ossified essence key passive by giving you extra critical strike damage for your bone skills by 1% for each point of essence above 50 up to 40%. Of course, it is the amount of essence you have when you cast the Bone Spear. Lidless Wall is here, of course, because it is amazing, it is defensively sound, it makes you attack faster, it can restore your resource and spread Bone Storms, which will keep you alive through constantly generating barrier. For our amulet, we are running the Grasping Veins to improve the value of our corpse tendrils and give us like 30% increased critical strike chance and increased critical strike damage bonus. You might be seeing a theme here. Sack Soul for the ring. And now the last ring, there are variations too, in fact. One is the classic Umbral, which will do you well in an AoZ. However, if you're running Nightmare Dungeons for one reason or another, it's not fantastic against most end bosses. In fact, it doesn't work against end bosses at all because they do not become crowd controlled, but instead have a stagger bar. Now, Exposed Flesh, while lacking the consistency of Umbrals because it reads Lucky Hit up to a 10% chance to generate 50 essence when hitting a vulnerable enemy, can keep you going in a thick mob and is a lot better against small targets, especially ones that you expect to stay alive a lot, because at some point you're just going to apply a lot of CC and they're going to break through it, and then you have to cycle through the whole CC application again. This one can let you keep you going against the AoZ bosses. However, it is sometimes less consistent. While Bone Spear does have a very healthy lucky hit chance, I believe its base is 50%, which means any lucky hit additives do very well on it. Fact is, it is still a gamble, but usually a worthy one because Bone Spears hit a lot and you make things vulnerable a lot. Go with what you have. Honestly, getting a good roll of either one of these is pretty difficult, so I'm here to tell you, both are up, both are usable. Okay, Vampiric Powers, let's make this fast. Metamorphosis for the Unstoppable, Ravenous for the attack speed, Sanguine Brace for the Fortify, as well as critical strike chance improvement, Undying for the quick heals because we're going to cast spells really fast, and the very nice synergy with a certain passive I will discuss in the skills section, and Resilience for the extra damage reduction. Of course, you can remove Undying or Resilience for, say, Domination for the extra damage against hard CC'd fellows, or you can replace it with Anticipation if you don't want to run the Lidless Wall, so you can have Bone Storm up quicker. Alright, I will let Past Pat take you away to a wonderful world where we will discuss, I need to relax my tongue more. Talk about skills and paragons. Okay, it's time to talk about skills, but first let's talk about the Book of the Dead. We're going for Defender for the extra resistances. Skeletal Mages, well, this is going to be some conversation for other people, like Maximum Essence for the extra, essence, more ammo for you, and a lot of extra damage from various sources. Or you can go for extra damage to Vulnerable. Both are viable, and most people like to go with Cold. Personally, I wanted to try this just so I could spit out more bones before I needed to reset. It is entirely build dependent because we want to generate mana through Umbral, essence rather, through Umbral, and we want a big pool to put that Umbral mana generation into. Whereas if you're running Flesh, Exposed Flesh, this is probably better because you will be generating mana constantly rather than in a massive burst that stops after a period of time, such as when you've applied all your CC. So Cold Mages would be better. And, of course, Iron Golem. Yay! Critical strike damage. But now, actually, to abilities. Skills. Bone Splinters. Well, sometimes we run out of mana, and sometimes we cast Bone Splendors. I mean, it does give you an extra bit of critical strike chance, so that's great, but you can move some this point to somewhere else. 1 point into Unliving Energy to get to imperfectly balanced for the extra damage. Maxed out Bone Spear into Paranormal Bone Spear for the increased critical strike, as well as the additional bone shards that do extra damage. Hued Flesh to create corpses because we want to eat corpses for the various benefits we get, such as extra bonus from Fueled by Death and one of our legendary Paragon nodes. Corpse Explosion into Blighted Corpse Explosion. Again, there is some argument for this. If you're not using the things that increase damage reduction, let's say you opt for damage reduction while you are fortified, bonus damage reduction while you are fortified on your armor, the Blighted part is probably not as necessary as people might think, but having a Blighted Corpse Explosion hanging out in the back, hitting a mob that you ignored because it wasn't worth your time or because the group of mobs was too small, might keep you proccing your Bone Storm vis-a-vis Lidless Eye, Lidless Wall, Lidless Wall, Lidless Wall, Lidless Eye, Talrash's Lidless Eye. This is the Lidless Wall. That is a dog. Anyway, yeah, it could potentially be providing value in the background, but if that's not your jam, you can also move these points elsewhere because we're not really looking at the shadow part. We don't really have anything that looks at, shadowed things. So there's that. I mean, you could move points into Inspiring Leader for the extra attack speed, especially if you are working with exposed flesh, because the faster you attack, the faster you can start proccing exposed flesh, getting you more essence. As this is the Umbral version, I went with this instead, as well as, these stats on my gear. Death's Embrace for damage reduction and increased damage. Death's Reach for increased damage. Amplify damage, ignore the bonus on it, because that's not what we're looking at, but it is maxed out. Decrepify into Abhorrent Decrepify, just to make sure that we have our cooldowns on, especially manually cast Corpse Tendrils, which we do have. They apply Vulnerable. Even though our Bone Spears do that, I like the overlap in Vulnerable just to make sure that we don't miss. Especially if you're starting an encounter and, there's a corpse or things don't get hit properly, just to make sure that everyone possible has Vulnerable to, apply damage. I do not like Rapid Ossification. We don't really need the cooldown on that. So instead, it's just free into Serration, free into Compound Fracture, and of course, free into Evulsion, which is where your amulet bonus should be. It should be reflected in the link in the description below. 3 points at the Standalone, 3 points at the Memento Mori, or the Bone Storm, and the Ossified Essence. Now, on to Paragons. Okie dokie, it's time for the Paragon nodes. First node is Critical Strikes through Essence. More critical strikes we have, the better our headpiece will be. Also, just our overall damage. That's fairly important. We move on to Bone Graft, and we put in Sacrificial. Yeah, that makes sense to improve the bonuses in the magic nodes. There are some good nodes here, such as Willpower for extra resource generation, as well as more resistance to elements. You might want to pick this up. And you do, because I don't know why that's there. That's fixed now. That's gonna stay fixed. We need the extra intelligence to activate it. Okay, that all makes sense. But we don't need to max it out. We don't need to pick these up because we don't get any extra value from putting that on. I did make an effort to pick up a lot of the nodes here, such as the extra essence on kill, which will help you through most normal encounters. And of course, we're picking up Bone Graft for the extra damage and even more essence, which provides us with even more value. This is for later. Bloodbath is last. Next is Flesh Eater, which is the thing that gives us 40% increased damage after we eat corpses. And man, we do eat corpses for fun. This is where our Tears of Blood will go to maximize the resistance to all elements, as well as targeted bonus damage to elites is where it's at. The average enemy, even at higher, even at like 10, does not really matter. AOZ 10 rather, it's nothing. It's the elites that'll get you, especially since the spike in HP for the bosses in AOZs it's pretty high. Like, you could probably, what the hell is this? You could probably push much higher if the bosses weren't that difficult. Like, we could arguably hit 15 if we could deal with the bosses without that. Then we go up to Scent of Death and Undaunted, and I don't really care about the damage increase while you are fortified. I just cared about the damage reduction, and I don't even care about the bonus damage to injured enemies, so I just worked around it so we can get to Scent of Death. Then went all the way back to Bone Graft, went up here to pick up bloodbath for the extra slot, really. It's just here for control for the extra damage. We're always going to be applying CC, like slowed and stunned, and we want to take advantage of that. Okay, that's going to be it. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the episode. If you did, like, comment, subscribe, ring that bell, do all those nice things and more. I am looking forward to the new season already. I'm still having fun, but I'm ready to play other variants of Diablo 4, if you know what I mean. Anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I am Patinator. I'll see you later.